first we are going to get our measurements. We'll be needing 6. We're starting off with our apron width, which is the width of our apron from hip to hip. We are going to add 2 inches to your total. Top edge is the top part of your apron. You're going to find your neckline point by going from your armpit, going 3 inches in. Those 2 points is your top edge. Add 2 inches to your total. The next is our torso edge, which is basically our neckline point measuring to our hip point. So those are our top edge. Our midline is the length of our apron. So from top to bottom, you decide where you want your apron to end, either mid-thigh or high knee. You're going to add 2 inches to your total. Next is our neck ribbon, which is you're going to take your measuring tape around your shoulders and find those 2 neckline points. You're going to add 1 inch. Lastly, your waist ribbon is basically your ribbon from your hip point to however long you need to tie it. So next, we are going to make our marks. So decide which is the top and bottom of your fabric. You're going to fold your fabric in half longwise or hot dog style with the wrong side out, which means the pattern is inside. So from there, we're going to get our first markings, which is we're going to take our midline. We're going to take our measuring point on the folded end of our fabric. We're going to take a pencil or maybe a bright colored pencil if your fabric is dark. We're going to make our mark. And also the same thing on the open end of our fabric. Then we're going to go ahead and connect those 2 marks with a ruler to make our bottom edge. I always like to double check and make sure it's correct. Second is our apron width. So if your fabric is too wide, we're going to go ahead and make our marks. So take your apron width and we're going to get half of that. And we're going to make our markings on the open end. I'm going to make several marks in between so I could connect it with a ruler. So that is my line to cut for my apron width. Next is my top edge. So I'm going to get half of my top edge measurement and make a mark on the top part of the apron. Second is our torso edge. So in order to do that, we're going to go ahead and make our 0 point to where our neckline point is, or where you made your top edge. And then however long your torso edge is, you're going to go ahead and grab your measuring tape and angle it to where your total measurement for your total edge is. So those 2 dots right there, we're going to connect, and that makes your torso edge. It's great if you have a yard ruler. It just makes it easier, but if you don't, you can make do. So that is all we need to make our mark. So those 6 points. In my case, I had a lot of excess fabric, so I went ahead and adjusted my base line or my bottom edge, and I just went ahead and lowered it just a little bit more. I don't need that much fabric anyway, so I might as well use it up for making my apron a little bit longer. So that is basically it. We'll get ready to cut. So I'm going to go ahead and cut my bottom edge line first. If your apron is too wide, like for my part, even though I made the line for my apron width, I'm just going to go ahead and leave it as is. It's not much of a difference. If yours is, go ahead and cut it. Next is cutting your torso edge line. So save your excess fabric for pockets if you want to make pockets later. I went ahead and just trimmed all the edges to make it all even. And that is it. So now that we've cut our fabric, we're going to go ahead and open it up for the design facing down. Our fuse tape is about 1 inch wide, so we're going to make our crease the same size or maybe just a little bit wider. So I'm going to use my ruler here that's about the same size, a little bit wider than my fuse tape as a guide. So I'm just going to fold it using the ruler, and then I'm going to use the hard edge of the ruler to make my crease. Once you've gotten a hang of that, you could just eyeball it like I did. And then I've already warmed up my iron where it's hot enough, and I'm using that to make my crease. Making sure the fuse tape is nowhere near your hot iron. So I'm going to repeat the whole process on all the edges of my apron. So the next part of step 4 is cutting our ribbon. So we're going to get your neckline ribbon measurement and cut accordingly. The next is our waist ribbon. So if you have the kit, go ahead, split it in half and cut at an angle. We're going to go ahead and tie this in a loose knot just so that we don't confuse our ribbons later. So step 5 is gluing and using our iron-on fuse tape. If you haven't already, go ahead, preheat your iron to medium-high heat or low steam. We're going to start off with our torso edge. We're going to grab our fuse tape and just pre-measure. We're going to go ahead, trim and cut off the excess fuse tape sticking out of our crease. Go ahead, dampen our fabric with a spray and fold and place our iron-on fuse in the crease. I'm going to go ahead and cut off this little square corner here, so I don't want extra fabric when I fold it all together. I'm making sure that there's no fuse tape sticking out of the fold, or else it will make a mess on your hot iron. I'm going to go ahead and place my iron on the folded fabric for about 10 to 15 seconds with slight pressure and always moving it around. I'm still making sure the fuse tape is underneath the crease. Repeat this step if necessary, if there is still parts that the fuse tape didn't get on. Just make sure to keep a close eye so not to cause any burns. On the end, I'm going to make sure to check any corners. Like for this case, there's little spots here that didn't have a fuse tape. So I'm going to use my fabric glue, the E6000 or any quick dry fabric glue to seal that. You're going to repeat the exact same process on the other end. So our next thing to glue is our waist strip, and we're going to go ahead and cut an inch of fuse tape, wet our apron, and then iron it on to fuse. I'm going to re-iron the other side just to make sure it melted. And any corners here that didn't get fused, I'm going to use my fabric glue to reinforce it. Don't put too much glue. A little glue goes a long way and makes drying time a lot faster. After you fuse that down with glue, we're going to go repeat the process with the fuse tape on your left and right crease. So just cut a fuse tape, dampen your apron, and fuse the left and right side. You're going to use a paper clip to hold it down. Next is our neckline ribbon. So we're going to repeat the whole process. In this case, instead of using an inch of fuse tape, I just went ahead and used glue. So I put a square of glue on the corners of the apron and just placed my neckline ribbon on top. Next, we're going to grab our fuse tape and cut the length that we need, dampen our fabric, and then fold down, then fuse with your iron. So this time our neckline ribbon is facing down. We're going to go ahead and make that face up. So we're just gonna go ahead and put glue on the corners and press it facing up. We're gonna do the same exact thing on the waist ribbon. I know the video didn't show it, but it's basically the same exact thing. Again, placing paper clips to hold it down until it sets. Lastly is our bottom edge. So same exact thing, grab our fuse tape, dampen our fabric, and fold over our crease, and then use the iron to fuse. Making sure to check if there's any corners or parts of the fabric that didn't get fused down. Again, just use your fabric glue. Over here I had some little strands sticking out, so go ahead, just trim those. I'm picky about it, and that's up to you, but I just went ahead and looked through all of the little strands and just trim those off. Just be careful not to actually trim or cut your fabric or your apron. Lastly, you're going to grab your fabric glue and just do a border along the edges of your fabric just so that it seals and there's no any loose strand coming out or ripping off. I'm just wiping off the excess glue with the leftover fabric that we cut up earlier. So that is pretty much it. That is your apron. If you have any excess fabric available, we could use that to make pockets. So kind of pre-measure your pocket that you want. You could either make 1, 2, however big you want. We're going to make a crease in all around of our pocket fabric, the top and bottom. Same thing, about an inch thick. Second, we're going to fold our sides. So in this case, I'm making sure the top corner is a little bit, about 1/2 inch to 1 inch wider than the bottom. So that's why it has that angled. I'm going to go ahead and just make a line here and then cut off the excess fabric that I don't need. So this part gets a little bit tricky when gluing it down. I'm going to go ahead and cut off the little corners here and place my fuse tape on the top fold, and same thing, dampen your fabric, place your fuse tape, and then place your iron on top to fuse it. I forgot to trim off the little corners here, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Making sure also if there's any corners, again, any pockets that didn't get fused, use your glue to fuse it down. So in the bottom, you're gonna, this one's a little bit different. So the same thing, you make sure to cut off those excess corners. You don't need those. I'm gonna use my glue to place a line on the bottom of the crease here. So that acts as a little fuse holder. So the fuse sticks on there, and then I'm gonna align my pocket. My apron has a design, so it just happens to align perfectly. So that's great. And go ahead and dampen your fabric and start fusing it to the location you want. Making sure again there's no little holes that didn't get fused down. Iron it or use a glue to fill it up. So on the sides, where I'm gonna go ahead and do the same exact thing. I'm gonna fold it and place glue on the edge. I cut a little corner because it was sticking out. Go ahead, grab your fuse tape, and then when you press it down, you're gonna kind of go inward 1/2 inch. The reason for that is that you actually want to have space to actually put your hands or things in your pocket. So the reason why it's folded at an angle, so that when you press it down, you put it in about 1/2 inch, or the same size, 1/2 inch to 1 inch in. So same thing, I'm just going to iron on the other side as well to really make sure it's fused and melted. Repeat the same process on the other side. Grab your glue, place your fuse tape on top. Wet your fabric. And the same thing, I trimmed off the little corner that was sticking out. And then press it to where you want it, about 1/2 inch to 1 inch inward. And use your iron to fuse. Same thing on the other side, just to make sure it's sealed completely. And that is basically finished. So now that you have your pockets, I'm just gonna make sure, again, using my glue to reinforce the edges, any of the folded edges, and I just remove the excess excess glue. So that is your apron. It's pretty much done. Wait 24 hours for it to completely dry before using or washing.